It's weird, looking back at everything now. The whole thing feels like a foggy memory, like I wasn't even in control of myself, just going along with the motions. But I guess I need to start from the beginning, so here we go. It started with my husband Jack. He's not a bad guy, honestly. He's just, well, he's comfortable. Too comfortable, maybe. You know what I mean? Like we fell into this routine. He works long hours at his job. I take care of things at home, and we're both just kind of existing. There wasn't any big drama, but there also wasn't any excitement anymore. We'd just gotten used to the life we had, and after a while, it just felt stale. Then came the idea of a bachelorette party. One of my friends, Kate, was getting married, and she was planning this big, wild weekend trip to Vegas. At first, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to go. I mean, what was the point? But as the day got closer, I started thinking about it more. Maybe I needed a little adventure in my life. Maybe I just wanted to feel something, you know? So, I told Jack about it. And honestly, I was expecting him to give me the whole, "Why do you need to go to Vegas for a bachelorette party? Don't you think that's a little much?" speech. But instead, he surprised me. He just said, "Sure, babe. If you want to go, go." And I remember thinking, that's it. Like, no questions, no concerns. He just said it like it was no big deal. But that should have been my first clue, right? That lack of reaction. He wasn't really listening, wasn't really present in the moment. He didn't even care enough to pretend to be concerned. It felt like he was giving me permission, but not in a supportive way. It was like he was just letting me go, almost as if he didn't believe I'd actually do anything. And, honestly, that was probably the biggest mistake I made in all of this. Thinking it was all just for fun, thinking nothing serious would happen. Kate's wedding weekend came up fast, and I found myself flying to Vegas with a group of friends. I'll admit, I was excited. Not for the wedding itself, but because I was free for a weekend. No husband, no responsibilities, just a chance to be myself, whatever that meant. The first night we hit the Strip, and the energy was incredible. There were lights everywhere, music blasting, and the whole city just felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. It's like everything I had been holding in just exploded the minute I stepped into that wild environment. I could drink, I could dance, I could talk to anyone, and no one cared who I was or where I came from. It was the first time in ages I felt like I could breathe. We went to a club that night, and I remember the moment it happened. I wasn't even looking for it. I wasn't planning to cheat or do anything crazy. But then I saw him. He was standing at the bar, laughing with a group of guys, and for some reason, he just caught my attention. His name was Ben, and he had this energy about him that I hadn't felt in so long. He was confident, playful, and just alive. Not like Jack. Not like the man I'd been married to for years. It wasn't even like we had a conversation at first. We just made eye contact, and it was like this spark went off. He came over and bought me a drink, and we started talking. The more we talked, the more I realized how easy it was to be around him. I didn't have to explain myself, didn't have to pretend to be anyone else. I was just me. We danced a little, got closer, and the chemistry was undeniable. And maybe I should have stopped right there, but I didn't. Maybe if I had, none of this would have happened. But the night went on, and one thing led to another. We ended up leaving the club together, and I honestly don't even remember the details after that. I was so caught up in the moment, so lost in the excitement of it all, that I didn't even stop to think about what I was doing. I wasn't thinking about Jack. I wasn't thinking about anything other than the fact that I felt wanted, alive, and completely out of control in a way that I hadn't felt in years. And maybe that's why I did it. Maybe I was just desperate for a feeling of freedom, for the rush of something new. I wasn't thinking about the consequences. That's the thing about this whole mess. You don't think about it when it's happening. You don't stop to think about the people you're hurting or the damage you're causing. You just keep going, thinking it's all just a game, a little harmless fun. I woke up the next morning with Ben beside me, and I remember feeling this huge knot in my stomach. It wasn't guilt, at least not at first. It was more like a panic. Like, what the hell had I done? And then, almost immediately, I thought about Jack, about the life we built. But then, I pushed it all aside. I got up, got dressed, and went back to my friends, and I pretended like nothing had happened. But deep down, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. So, after that night, things didn't feel like I thought they would. I was expecting this rush of excitement, like I just unlocked some new chapter of my life. But instead, I felt empty. More than that, I felt like I'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. The next morning in Vegas, everything was blurry. I had a hangover that was, to put it mildly, unforgiving. But it wasn't the booze that made my stomach twist. It was the reality, the shame, the realization that I had done something that went against everything I'd ever promised myself, everything I'd promised Jack. But instead of coming clean right away, I kept going. I tried to ignore it, told myself it was just one stupid mistake. Everyone makes mistakes, right? That's what I kept telling myself. I kept thinking, I'm not that kind of person. But maybe I'm just a little lost right now. And isn't that what we all do when we mess up? We try to justify it. We try to convince ourselves that it was just a temporary lapse, something that doesn't define who we are. The rest of the weekend in Vegas was a blur of drunken nights, guilt-fueled smiles, and forced conversations with my friends. They could tell something was off, but I don't think they knew exactly what. They kept asking if I was okay, and I just nodded, pretending everything was fine. It wasn't fine. I wasn't fine. Ben and I didn't talk much after that night. He'd text me a couple of times, but I ignored his messages. Part of me wanted to talk to him again, just to feel that sense of freedom, that sense of being desired. But I couldn't. The guilt was eating me alive. And the worst part, I didn't know how to stop it. Eventually, the weekend came to an end. My friends and I flew back home, and I went straight back into my normal life. But everything felt different. The world around me felt off kilter, like I was walking on a tightrope and just waiting for it all to come crashing down. When I got back, Jack was waiting for me at the airport. He gave me that familiar, tired smile. The kind of smile he gave me after a long week at work. And in that moment, I realized that I was a stranger to him. Not just in the literal sense, but emotionally. He didn't know me anymore. He didn't know the woman who had been out in Vegas, making decisions she couldn't undo. I put on a smile and kissed him on the cheek, pretending everything was normal. He asked how the trip was, and I said it was good, just like I always did when I came back from these things. The truth. It wasn't good. It was far from good. I was so angry at myself. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to find some way to justify what I'd done. But deep down, I knew it was wrong. And I couldn't look Jack in the eye without feeling like I was betraying him. But I couldn't tell him either. I didn't know how to admit it. How to come clean when it felt like the one thing I was really holding on to was my own secret. The next few days were a blur of normalcy. We didn't talk about the trip. Jack went back to work, and I went back to my routine. I didn't tell anyone about what happened. I didn't want to. Not yet. But the guilt didn't go away. It lingered. It haunted me every time Jack touched me, every time he looked at me with those trusting eyes. I'd think about Ben, think about how easy it was to talk to him, how carefree everything had felt, and then I'd remember Jack, his face, his dedication, the way he tried to make things work, and I knew, deep down, that I could never do it again. Not with Ben. Not with anyone. But the hardest part was that I couldn't undo what I had done. There was a part of me that just wanted to forget about it, to push it all away and pretend like it didn't happen. I even considered just never telling Jack. Maybe he wouldn't ever have to know. Maybe I could go on with my life, with my marriage, and nothing would ever change. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I had a moment one afternoon when Jack was away at work. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, looking at myself like I didn't recognize the woman staring back. I tried to justify it again. I'm just going through a phase. I'll get over this. But every time I tried to talk myself out of it, the truth pushed through. It wasn't a phase. It was a mistake. And as much as I hated the idea of facing it, I knew that at some point, I'd have to tell him. I don't know what I was expecting, but I didn't think it would happen like this. I should have been the one to confess. I should have been the one to sit down with Jack and tell him everything, as painful as it would have been. But, of course, that's not how it went. No, I got careless. I got too comfortable with the lie, thinking that maybe if I didn't acknowledge it, maybe if I just pretended it never happened, it would eventually fade away. I should have known better. It was a Wednesday night when it all came crashing down. Jack had been acting a little distant lately, but I didn't think much of it at first. He's been busy at work, you know. The kind of busy where he comes home late and doesn't have the energy to talk. But that night, he wasn't even tired. He seemed off. There was something in the way he looked at me, a strange intensity that made my stomach drop. It happened when I was making dinner, standing over the stove, stirring the pot. He came into the kitchen, his hands in his pockets, and asked, "How was the trip, babe?" It was so casual, so normal, but the way he said it, it didn't feel like a simple question. It felt like he already knew something, like he was waiting for me to slip up, to say the wrong thing. I kept my back to him and tried to act like everything was fine. It was good. Vegas was fun. Just a little crazy, you know. But it's always a blast. I laughed nervously, but I felt it. The lie was choking me. Jack didn't say anything for a moment. I could hear him moving around behind me, but he wasn't speaking. The silence felt heavy, like there was a weight in the room that wasn't there before. Then, he asked again, "Was it really just fun?" I froze. I could feel my heart in my throat. He wasn't buying it. I slowly turned around to face him. And that's when I saw it, the look in his eyes. It wasn't anger, not yet. But it was something else. Something cold. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled out his phone and showed me something. Something that made my blood run cold. It was a picture. A picture of me. A picture of me with Ben from the night in Vegas. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My knees almost gave out, but I managed to stay standing. My breath came in shallow gasps as I stared at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. There was no denying it. There I was, smiling, holding hands with Ben, clearly enjoying the night, clearly not caring about anything else. "How did you?" I whispered, my voice barely a sound. "I have my ways," Jack said, his voice icy. "I know people who know people, and they know what happened. What you did." He paused, letting the words hang in the air like a toxic cloud. "How long?" "Sarah." It was the first time he said my name in that way, with that coldness in his voice. And it hit me like a punch to the gut. He didn't even look at me like his wife anymore. He looked at me like a stranger. I couldn't answer him. I didn't know what to say. All the guilt I'd been feeling for days, all the shame I'd pushed aside, came rushing back in full force. It was like every lie I'd told. Every moment I tried to pretend nothing had happened was unraveling in front of me. "Sarah?" Jack said again, this time his voice trembling, like he was holding back a flood of emotion. "How long has this been going on? How long have you been lying to me?" I could see the hurt in his eyes now, the raw, unfiltered hurt that I'd caused. I knew I couldn't hide from it anymore. I couldn't pretend anymore. I had to face it, face him. I don't know," I said quietly. My voice cracked, and I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes. "It wasn't planned, Jack. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." He shook his head, almost like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You didn't mean to hurt me. Really. You didn't mean for it to happen, but you let it happen. You made a choice. And you lied about it." I felt my chest tighten, the weight of his words sinking in. He was right. I made the choice. I let it happen. I was the one who allowed myself to get carried away with someone else, with Ben, when I should have been thinking about my marriage, about Jack. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, but it felt like the words weren't enough. It wasn't enough. Nothing could be enough. Jack's face twisted in pain. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about a mistake. This is about trust. This is about you choosing someone else over me, over everything we built." His voice rose now, raw with anger and disbelief. "I never thought you'd do something like this. Never. I thought I knew you. I thought I could trust you. I was lost, Jack," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know who I was anymore. I thought this would make me feel alive again. But I didn't want to hurt you. I swear I didn't want to. Then why didn't you tell me?" He asked, his voice breaking now. "Why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you come to me when you were feeling this way?" I didn't have an answer. I couldn't answer him. How could I explain it? How could I explain how alone I felt? How empty I felt in that relationship before everything happened? How could I justify my actions when I knew deep down there was no excuse? We stood there in silence for what felt like an eternity, the weight of everything crashing down around us. And then Jack turned and walked out of the kitchen without saying another word. I wanted to run after him, to beg him to stay, to tell him how sorry I was. But I couldn't. I knew that there was nothing I could say or do to fix it now. I had shattered everything, and there was no going back. The next few days were the longest of my life. The silence between Jack and me felt like a heavy, suffocating weight, and no matter how much I wanted to fix it, no matter how many times I tried to talk to him, it felt like the distance between us kept growing wider. It wasn't even like we were arguing. It was worse than that. It was the quiet, the cold, dead silence that filled every room we shared. He didn't yell at me. He didn't call me names. He just shut down. The man who had once been so full of life, so passionate about everything, had completely closed himself off. I tried to apologize. Over and over again. I sent him texts, left him voicemails, tried to start conversations, but he wouldn't engage. He barely even looked at me. Every time I spoke, it was like my words didn't reach him, like he couldn't bear to hear anything I had to say. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about the affair. This wasn't just about my mistake. This was about the fact that I had broken something so fundamental between us: trust. And once that's gone, once you've shattered it, there's no simple way to piece it back together. You can't just glue the cracks and hope it all looks normal again. At first, I thought maybe he just needed time. Maybe he was in shock. But after a couple of days of not saying a word to me, just silently going through the motions of living together, I realized he wasn't going to forgive me. Not easily, not ever. And honestly, I don't know if he could. The more I thought about it, the more I understood how much I had hurt him. I had betrayed him, and I had destroyed a piece of him that would never come back. I was so lost in my own guilt and regret. I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to fix it. I kept thinking, if I can show him how sorry I am, maybe he'll understand. Maybe we can heal. But the truth was I couldn't fix this. Not in a day, not in a week. The damage was done. Days turned into a week, and then another week passed. The quiet between us was unbearable. I began to question everything. How did we get here? How did I let it get this far? We hadn't had a huge falling out or any big fight. It was just the slow, quiet unraveling of something I took for granted. Something I didn't even realize was slipping through my fingers until it was too late. I tried to keep myself busy. I went to work, spent time with friends, but nothing made the pain go away. Every time I saw Jack, every time he avoided my gaze, my heart would break all over again. I could see it in his eyes, the hurt, the betrayal. He couldn't look at me the same way anymore. He couldn't trust me anymore, and it made me sick. Finally, after almost 2 weeks of this agonizing silence, Jack came to me. We were sitting on the couch one evening, watching TV, and it was one of those moments where I thought maybe, just maybe, things could go back to normal. But then, out of nowhere, he turned to me and said, "I can't do this anymore." My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what he meant. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "I can't stay here pretending like everything's okay when I don't trust you. I can't just forget what you did. I can't forget how you made me feel. And honestly, I don't know if I ever will." He paused, his voice trembling slightly. "I need space. I need to think." And that was it. That was the moment that everything changed. That was the moment I realized that there was no going back. There was no magic fix, no simple solution. My actions had consequences, and now it was time to face them. We didn't talk much after that. He moved into the guest room, and I stayed in our bedroom. There were no more hugs, no more simple gestures of affection. Just emptiness. Just two people living together in the same house, but worlds apart. For days I kept asking myself, why did I do it? What was it that drove me to be so reckless? I couldn't answer. I still couldn't understand why I'd risk everything I had for a fleeting moment of excitement with someone I barely knew. It didn't make sense. I tried to convince myself that maybe he'd come around. That maybe he'd realize that everyone makes mistakes. That I could fix it. that I could prove I was still the woman he married. But deep down, I knew I had already lost him. The hardest part wasn't the silence or the distance. It was the fact that I had broken him. I had hurt him in a way that couldn't be undone. It wasn't long before Jack told me he was leaving. He didn't yell, didn't make a scene. He just said it calmly, as if he had already accepted what was happening. As if he had already made peace with the idea that our marriage was over. I think we need time apart. I'm going to stay with my brother for a while, he said. I need to think about everything. I need space to figure out what I want. I couldn't stop him. Part of me wanted to beg him to stay, to promise him that I'd do anything, but I knew better. I knew I couldn't force him to forgive me. I couldn't undo the damage I'd caused. So, I just nodded, my throat tight, my eyes filled with tears. The door clicked behind him as he left, and I was alone. Alone with the weight of my choices, with the wreckage I had created. And in that silence, I finally realized what I had lost. Not just Jack, not just our marriage, but a part of myself that I would never get back. I thought I'd been searching for something to make me feel alive again. But in the end, all I found was destruction. I don't know if Jack will ever forgive me. I don't know if there's a way back from this. All I know is that I've learned the hardest lesson of all. You can't fix everything with just an apology. Sometimes the damage is too deep. And sometimes the consequences are far worse than you could ever imagine.